It all comes into sort of selection, I think, at the start, and then if you're selecting the good produce off a trusted supplier, or direct off the boat in some cases, just treating it simply is key, just taking the time to cook it correctly. It sort of starts from when it comes out of the water and how you treat it before it goes onto the plate.
This is the Deep in the Weeds podcast. I'm Anthony Huckstep. One of the beautiful things about a career in hospitality is the ability to travel the globe, obtain skills, and return to your roots to raise the game in the region you grew up in. But with the worldly experience, what's it like returning to the fold? Nick Mahlook is the owner of Soda Fish Bar and Grill in Lakes Entrance, Victoria. Nick, how are you?
Good, Huck. How are you?
Good. You've had a pretty stellar career, but you grew up in Lakes Entrance and returned to the fold, as a way of putting it. What's it been like going back to sort of the region you grew up in to open a restaurant?
Well, it's been amazing, really. Look, just getting back there with old friends, family, and sort of a network that was already set up was amazing. And we did it in a time where, everything was sort of turned into shit in Melbourne. So it was a really great time to get back there, really. Even if it meant sleeping on people's couches and staying at your parents-in-law and, all those bits and pieces with a couple of kids, it was still great.
Well, tell us about that decision to make that move. How did it come about?
Well, I was exec chef at Atlantic Restaurant at Crown. I'd been there for a few years, and the whole COVID situation kicked off, and I thought, what am I going to do now? My wife was pregnant with our second child, and I had a bit of annual leave up my sleeve, so I thought, I might take a little break now. It's a good time to sort of part ways. I thought I'd given Atlantic enough, and I thought we'll have our child, I'll take a couple of months off and I'll get another job after she's born, it'll be easy. And then it kept going and going. I thought, Jesus, I better do something now. I started looking around, and there wasn't as much opportunity around there as there used to be. And it's always been something that I've wanted to do, start something from scratch and build a new team from scratch. And, and I love Lakes Entrance. I've always wanted to go back down there, and I saw opportunity to start a restaurant down there because there's so much great produce down there that I think is a little bit unknown, and I've always loved seafood. And I saw an opportunity through a friend of mine that there was a floating restaurant up for sale, and sometimes when you think floating restaurant, you're like, oh, here's a gimmick and a bad story waiting to happen. But this one I thought was great. It's an old passenger ferry from Raymond Island in Paynesville in East Gippsland. Yeah, it's really cool. And my school friend that I grew up with for years, his parents run it as a cafe and fresh seafood shop. And they've been trying to get out for a while. And me and my wife and my sister and my wife's brother all decided to thought, it's a good opportunity. We can buy fish straight from the trawlers, and there are next door neighbours on the fishing wharf and the same wharf we tie up on. It's great, and we thought, we can just do simple seafood done really well, in a beautiful environment. And that was our business model. And here we are about a year and a half later.
What were the challenges involved in starting your own business from scratch like that, especially one that's a little bit unique like the one that you've landed?
Well, it was an established business, so doing the sale and handing it all over, and all the sort of legal stuff, that was pretty hard. But my brother-in-law was pretty savvy at that, so he helped out with that. Setting something up in a town where you can't just, roll on down the chef's hat and get what you need, or, call the suppliers that you've been dealing with for 15 years and get what you need. You're dealing with people that, do 2 or 3 day a week veg deliveries and once a week dry goods, and, and then dealing with fishing boats who literally go out when the weather's good and come back in at 3 a.m. in the morning and, and put a box of fish on your back deck. But, all those sort of logistical things and building a network that I sort of used to have, but you need to solidify that network and build relationships again in that town. That was pretty challenging. And then the story of the staff, that's a constant, but that's always going to be there.
You grew up in the region. Take us back to when you were young. What sort of role did food and produce of the region play in your family when you were a kid?
Well, I sort of, my mum and dad have they used to have the local winery in Lakes Entrance, and I sort of grew up, riding around on the three-wheeler and scaring birds away in the vineyards and washing dishes out the back in the cafe that they ran there, and did a bit of time on their cruise boat. And my sister, who I'm in business with now, she was the chef at the winery, and I started working with her sort of right back when I was like 12 or 13, and I was pretty much just giving her the shits back then. I think I pretty much am now, but nothing much has changed. And, me and my mates used to just go out in the tinnies and go fishing and go camping and, sort of, not living off the land, but, we'd just, make fun for ourselves on the Gippsland Lakes. And that was sort of the fun part of growing up there. And you got a real appreciation of what was around and the environment you were in. And looking back now, I sort of took it a bit for granted. We were in this amazing, pristine waterway where, the boats went out fishing. It was just normal, I did a couple of trips with my sister's partner out on trawlers and stuff, and I just thought it was the coolest thing, just going out there and seeing everything that they brought in. And then sort of fast forward a couple of years, my sister had a restaurant in the main strip of lakes, and her partner was a deckhand on a fishing trawler. So we would just trade mixed bins of fish for beer, because you couldn't really trade money for fish. It's against the law. But it's legal to do slabs of beer, and whatever they didn't sell to market, we used to just get, ockies, cuttlefish, John Dory's, little school whitings, red mullet, things like this, heaps of flathead. And that's sort of where I learned to get around to fish a little bit, and, learned how to cook it at my sister's restaurant, which is great.
You ended up making the move to Melbourne at a young age. How different was the commercial kitchens of Melbourne to what you grew up with with your sister's restaurant?
It was chalk and cheese. Like, I thought I knew a little bit, coming out of, a pretty good kitchen in Lakes Entrance, going down to the Big Smoke. But I walked into Stokehouse and I think I cried my first 3 shifts after work, just because it was so different. I think there was about 10 chefs working a shift, and I was in the corner like cleaning 20 kilos of calamari and peeling prawns, and then just getting, trying to get through service. But it was definitely a learning experience in that kitchen. It was a great kitchen to be in, though. Working with Morris Esposito straight up, he taught me some really, really important things about seafood, and, let me learn off him, which was great.
You spent a decade in that kitchen. Tell us, do you have any stories of that speak of the time and experiences you had there?
Oh, look, it was a long time there, and one of the things that really kept me there was the fact that you were always learning under different chefs, and then just the sort of the chef de parties and the sous chefs and the apprentices that all went through there were just such good people. We had such a good culture of people going through there. Everyone was welcomed. Everyone was professional. Everyone loved a little drink after work maybe and a socialise, but it it was a really great environment to be in, and with the front of house as well. Like we were all one big family there. That was pre-fire, but it was just an amazing place to work, and that's why I stayed there for so long.
You ended up being head chef of the Stokehouse Cafe. Tell us about what it was like taking on that role and putting together the menu as well.
Well, that was my first sort of head chef role when I moved downstairs. I think I ran out of stuff to do upstairs, so I thought, we'll put him downstairs and hopefully he stays with us a bit longer. But curating your first menu is always a bit of a challenge, I think, for anyone who's done it before. You step out of that comfort zone of, coming up with a special here or there to actually putting your name behind something and following through with it and, putting yourself on the line a little bit. Again, we had the support of upstairs and all the support of everyone around us launching that place, but yeah, very challenging at the same time. A lot of eyes were on us, and it took a long time to get up and going until we were sort of happy where we were sitting with our quality of product going out, and all our staffing levels and the consistency and all that sort of stuff. It was a hard slog for a year, one of the toughest years I've ever done. But then it burnt down, so after that it was easy.
Well, the menus that you created were influenced from your travels in Europe and South America. Take us on those journeys. What sort of influences were there on your food from those trips?
Oh, look, just simple stuff, and a lot of stuff done over charcoal. Like I remember in South America, I went on a trip with my friends from school, like my high school best mates, and we went to Argentina and stuff like that. And the stuff on the parrilla, and the lambs cooking and having big hunks of meat, and then stuff in Italy and Spain, like the seafood over charcoal there. It always sort of brought me back home to Lakes Entrance. You could just imagine those red mullets over charcoal, or some sardines or something over charcoal, and it just sort of, that nostalgic stuff always brings you back home. And I know it's that cliche, always produce driven and all that crap, but it sort of is when you've got that great produce. And I believe if you just add a little bit of charcoal to it, get a little bit of flavour, and you dress it simply, or serve it with a bit of olive oil or something like that, it just sort of speaks to itself. And then when the concept for the cafe at the Stokehouse was sort of pitched to me, it's like, that sort of fits pretty well. We had a rotisserie, we had a parrilla grill, and then we had a josper, sort of one of the first jospers that came into the country. And we were like, oh wow, this is going to be great. And we had a good fish supplier, and we were doing some great vegetables and stuff over the charcoal and stuff. It just sort of fit me to a T. And yeah, it was those travels and my story in Lakes Entrance sort of all came to this moment where I thought, oh wow, this is meant to be. And it all just happened like that.
You mentioned the fire in the Stokehouse. What sort of impact did that have on you and your career at the time?
Well, it sort of put a bit of a stop to it for a little bit, and I think it was good. I'd been going at Stokehouse with the Van Hendels for about 10 years, and it was great and everything was good. Cafe was really starting to click and it was in a good space, but sometimes you need those circuit breakers to just put you on the next path. And it was pretty full on, like that joint burning down and my involvement with it. I was just like me and Anna Tui sort of were the last people to leave that place. We shut off the gas, we evacuated people, and then just watched it burn to the ground. And it was pretty emotional. Like she'd been there for 18 or so years. I'd been there for 10 years, and we just sort of watched it all crash down. And I don't know, the next few months we just sort of, we had a few drinks and just thought about the last few years. And I don't know, that it was a major sort of milestone in our life. And we did a pop-up on the site and we set up the city site, but eventually those things didn't work and we moved on. And I sort of, after that Stokehouse sort of picture ended, I sort of took a little bit of a break from sort of serious cooking, you could say, and I looked after a pub for a little bit in WA, and that was a good little break for me. And I stayed in this bloke's house, at the pub owner's house, and I had a great spot next to the river there in Dalkeith. I was living it up, but that was only a few months stint, but it was a good little break. And I did a little bit of time on a boat up in the Kimberley, and I was the chef on a cruise boat, and just stuff like that. It just sort of, I don't know, it was working, but it was like so much fun to go out and do stuff like that. Like the Kimberley is an amazing place. I don't know if you've been there, but it's just the colours and the nature and the story about it all. It's just beautiful.
What sort of food do you cook on a cruise boat in the Kimberleys?
Just something to fill them up, My go-to was an Anzac cookie slice for morning tea, which kept them pretty bloody happy. And then, just they did a lot of fishing, so we're cooking a lot of barramundi and some sashimi queen fish and mangrove jack and stuff like that on the barbecue. It wasn't too fancy. It was stuff to just fill them up, and not fill them up, but just good food that they would hopefully catch, and then a few staples in between it. You'd put on a roast or two and cook them some nice breakfast. But it was more about the experience for them up there, and it was the experience for me too. It was I really nailed it one day. The air conditioner went down just before we left for a trip. Gave me the chance to get ahead on the prep for a whole day, and just worked ahead on a day, and then I'd always go out on cruise ships on the little tenders just to see the sights, see the birds, see the fish and all that sort of gear. So it was a really good experience for me to get up there. It was great.
You ended up as the executive chef at the Atlantic restaurant. How did that come about?
The person I mentioned before, Anna Tui, she goes, "Look, Donovan's leaving. Do you want a job?" And I said, "Sure, why not?" And then I went and got the job there. But I was sort of Anna's been a pretty big influence over my career. She was a head maitre d' at the Stokehouse, and then she was the general manager at Atlantic, and now she's the general manager of hospitality for where I work now. But Anna got me on there. We took the food in a little bit of a different direction from where Donovan had taken it. He's very refined and very technique driven, as well as project. I don't like describing other people's food, but we sort of had a little bit more laid back and casual approach to it, but still in that sort of high end environment, which I think people received quite well, and it was a really good experience working there over 3 or so years that I was there, and working with some, again, amazing seafood. The seafood that from a boy doing mixed bags in Lakes Entrance to using the best fish and seafood in Australia, some amazing produce from Queensland and WA and South Australia, like everywhere. It was a real treat to see all that great produce coming through the door, and have the ability to serve it as well, because you're doing high volume and high end like that. It's like there's something for sort of every market. We can serve crayfish and caviar to one person, and some sardines from Port Phillip Bay to another person. It was great.
Was there any species or dishes that speak of your time at the Atlantic that you can tell us about?
Well, there was all sorts, but I really loved getting back to that, to the local stuff. To sardines and and whitebait and Corner Inlet gear, like the Tommy Ruff out of Corner Inlet, or the Bay, or some King George. I always love King George. It's a bit of a Rolls Royce for me, but I just love cooking King George over charcoal. Just a little touch on the grill is beautiful. So delicate, but you can just give it so much with just a little touch of charcoal. I think it's great.
Cooking seafood beautifully is a real art form. What's your sort of tips on getting it right?
Well, it all comes into sort of selection, I think, at the start. And then if you're selecting the good good produce off a trusted supplier, direct off the boat in some cases. Just treating it simply is key, just taking the time to cook it correctly, not cooking it too much, leaving it rest. I think a lot of people sometimes, like you do with a big cut of protein, like a meat or like a beef or pork or something like that, you need to let it rest. And same goes for fish, I believe, like especially on the bone. You want to cook it, but then you need it. Give it a little time to rest before you eat it. It's very important. What we were talking about, cooking methods. Cooking and storing methods are one as well, keeping it dry, so you can get a crispy skin if you're after that. We could go on and on about cooking methods, but it sort of starts from when it comes out of the water and how you treat it before it goes onto the plate.
I hear you're quite a handy fisherman, defending champion of the Narooma Oyster Festival fishing comp. Tell us a bit about your love of fishing and the connection you have with the produce.
Look, if you ask anyone but the Narooma fishing comp, or Narooma Oyster fishing comp, was it? They'd say I'm a shocking fisherman. But I do like getting away with my friends and throwing a line in, or just, putting away my little boat that's tied up soda fish and going to drink a couple of cans and trying to hook a couple of whiting out in the lake there in Lake's Entrance. But, it's all about getting the line wet and talking a bit of shit with your friends, I think. That's what it's all about. And these days it's taking my kids out, and don't get to do it often enough, but my daughter's just turned 5 and love getting tangles in her, fishing rod. So that's always a good fun day out, trying to untangle her mess. But it's good. It's good time spent on the water.
Soda Fish is on Middleboat Harbour in Lake's Entrance. Tell us a bit about the local seafood you're using and the offering that you have.
So we have our staples down there, right? We have our octopus, which we get off Mitchelson's. They go octopus fishing like half the year. So we process that all through the year and freeze it down and prepare it to use all the way through the year. So that's always a staple. Tiger flathead's always a staple. That's the main catch of the trawlers down here. We use a little bit of like red mullet sometimes, John Dory, rockling sometimes, gurnet or latchet, sort of just all that mixed bag stuff that comes in with the flathead. We also get some fish from the inlet. We've got a fisherman that lives in Lake's Entrance but works in Corner Inlet in South Gippsland, so we've got a good line on King George whiting. We get some calamari out of there. What else do we get out of there? Sometimes we get rock flathead when we haven't got flathead from Lake's Entrance, so it's a good little alternative we've got down there. So, there is some really stuff that's on there all the time, but then we mix it up with just whatever sort of mixed stuff they're getting in, and that's the stuff the boats sell us mostly, because they'll send whatever off to market, and then we'll sort of scoop off the good stuff from the top. We'll just say to them, give us the stuff you caught in the last couple of shots, and a few bins of flathead to process, So we've got a good relationship with a couple of trawlers down here and a few fishermen, and yeah, it's good. I forgot about sardines as well. We got Mitchelson's that do great sardines. They're beautiful. So whenever they go out, we grab some fresh, or even the IQF frozen stuff. Their sardines are just beautiful. So we'll always try and have some sort of sardine or something like that on the menu. They do nice little bay trout or Aussie salmon as well. We've had smoked on the menu, which goes down great, to be honest. Yeah.
Is it different running a restaurant in a regional spot like that compared to something like the Atlantic, which is, right in the centre of Melbourne?
Well, yeah, it is. Like say in Atlantic, I like to use, Port Phillip Bay stuff and Corner Inlet stuff, and we use Lakes Entrance stuff anyway, but sort of trying to be sort of Victorian focused, but Lakes Entrance is like just Lakes Entrance focused, and as much as we can, as much as we can. We've got really great growing flats around Lindenau and Bairnsdale for our fruit, vegetables mostly, or green leafy vegetables as well. So we've got a real food bowl down there. And it's about the relationships down there as well. Like being from Melbourne, Melbourne wankers come back to lakes, and they probably still say it about me. But trying to get in touch with local people down there and build relationships so you can get the best possible produce, and build a community around your restaurant as well. I think it's really important, and that's where I've got a head chef there now who lives and breathes the local area, and my sister's lived there all her life, and she manages the floor and has influence in the kitchen as well. And with that team there running the place, it's just it's invaluable. It connects us to the community, and it keeps us there. So that's probably the most important piece of the puzzle right there.
If opening a restaurant during this time wasn't a big enough step, you've also taken on another role just recently. Can you tell us a bit about it?
Well, I've taken a role. I'm just trying to think about how I could best describe it. So I've taken a role with a group called Public Hospitality, and they're based in Sydney, and they're all about buying pubs and getting a good food and bev offer in there. So they've got about 12 under their belt or so at the moment, mostly in Sydney, a couple in Melbourne, a few in the Northern Rivers in New South Wales, and we've just launched our first sort of relaunch this week. So it's been a pretty full-on few weeks for me launching into that, but it's a really good environment to be in, and again, I think I'm working with really great people. So sort of the next chapter for me. I think bit in Sydney life, so it's good. It's really good. So I'm looking after all of culinary for this group. So another challenge for me, but it should be a good one. And good people around me again, like I mentioned, like Anna and co. So it should be great.
This reconnecting with your roots, with the lake entrance sort of area, and you've got a young family as well. Has that sort of reconnecting had an impact on you?
Well, yeah, like through COVID, it was like I was the stay-at-home parent first and foremost for my eldest daughter, and then after we launched the restaurant in the second bout of COVID, I was again the primary carer for our youngest daughter, or both of them, and having that time with them, I still think of it as just like the best time I've ever had in my life. Like there was definitely challenges, but to be able to spend that with my young family, I wouldn't trade it again for the world. And even now when I go to work and I fly up to Sydney for 3 or 4 days at a time, I miss them so much, but I'm always so appreciative for those first few years I got to spend with them one-on-one, changing all the nappies and cooking all their food and cleaning up all their mess. But it was great, and I think without COVID and all those challenges that we faced as an industry in hospitality, I would have never have got that, and I just couldn't thank COVID enough for it. But it was, yeah. I know that's a pretty funny thing to say, but it's you got to find silver linings in things, and it's the best silver lining I could have asked for.
You've built an incredible career with a real amazing focus on seafood. What is it that you love about what you do?
I don't know. It's a good question. Look, I really love what I built in Lakes Entrance, and I always like going back there. And I mentioned before, I've got a little putt-putt boat that I tie up to the side of soda fish. I love going out in that and having a meal in the restaurant and and having a couple of cans with the chefs out the back, and and seeing it really, really. I love seeing the people who work in it be happy in their environment and running it successfully, and having a good culture in that environment. And I really look forward to my new role, to building good culture in the new role, and building a really big team with great bones in it. It's a funny thing. I think team and culture is a really important thing for me, and that's what I sort of pride myself in, I think.
Well, Nick, it's been an absolute honour to have you on Deep in the Weeds today to hear a bit of your story. Good luck with the pub group and, of course, with Soda Fish as well. Please keep in touch and we'll catch up again soon.
Thanks heaps for having me, Huck. It was great to talk.
This is the Deep in the Weeds podcast. I'm Anthony Huckstep. Stay tuned as we take a deep dive into the lives of the incredible people who ply their trade in the food and hospitality sector. Special thanks to executive producer Rob Locke for making this all happen. Follow us on Instagram at Deep in the Weeds Podcast or email us at podcast@deepintheweeds.com.au. Stay safe and be well.